consider client-side web technology? Can anyone give me any example? Laptop, yeah. I mean, you need your computer to access websites, right? Okay, so now that we have the laptop, then the next thing that you need is the software that would allow you to access websites, and we call that a web browser. So that's a very good start. What else? Okay, so now that we have the web browser, if we want to search for a website, we can use search engine. Doing very good on me. Okay, certainly you need, before you can access the search engine, you need the internet connection. What else? So you access the website. How do you access the website? Okay, you type in the URL and then you press enter, and then what happens? Okay, so HTTP request. So that HTTP is a protocol that transports, well, yeah, that basically transports the data, the website, to your web browser. What else? We're almost there. Something with the display. All right. So that's the first keyword that I was looking for the client side. You need something we call HTML to display markups, to display the content, okay, of our website. What else? Anybody has CSS? Okay. So what do we need CSS for? Who has dabbled and played around with making a web page before? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. So you guys should know this then. All right, 4 or 5. We have maybe 10 people in this class. So the students, Good mentioned CSS. Okay. Another guy mentioned HTML. Why do we need to use CSS? For those of you who have created websites before. Make it look nicer to style your page. Anything else besides HTML and CSS that you could think? Okay, JavaScript. Why do we need JavaScript? What is JavaScript? Okay, JavaScript is a language. Okay, so for those of you who have not created a website before or created a web page, okay, so those are the terms that I want you to pay attention to. I'm not going to formally define yet what they are, but I want you to keep them in mind. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Those are the 3 technologies on the client side that we'll be taking a look at today. But first, before we can move on to those technologies, I just want to make sure that you guys understand, you know, when you type something into the web browser's address bar, how does that web page get displayed? And it can be summed up using this diagram, right? Starting on from the top left diagram, that's a window, a browser, right? And you type something into the address bar, and then what happens? Do you think that it is the web browser that generates the content that you see? No, right? Something else, right, that is in the internet cloud generates that and then returns that to your web browser so that you can see the content. Essentially what happens every time you visit a link, okay, using your web browser makes a connection to some remote server. So we call the machine that serves websites, web pages, as web server, okay? So when the web browser makes a connection, it will attempt to get a document, in other words, a web page, from the web server, and then the web server will simply return the requested web page to the web browser, and then hence you'll get the web page displayed on your web browser. So in a nutshell, this is how websites work, right? You type something in, the web browser makes contact to the web server understands your request, and then it returns the requested document or web page to you, and then displayed on the web browser. As I had mentioned earlier, today we're not going to be focusing on the server, but we're going to be looking at how do you display a web page on a web browser, okay? And to do that, you accomplish that using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Well, JavaScript is not really related to displaying something, but we'll talk about what JavaScript is for. So what we have here is a courtesy of Ajahn Atiwong's Facebook webpage, okay? And when you think of website, a web page, I want you to remember and understand these three keywords. They are what are they? What are the three keywords I want you to remember? Okay, thank you. And who else is my target today? Oh, Batra. You should have prepared yourself. Okay. So hold on, let me digress a bit. Out of all the 13 groups, there's only one group that I'm really impressed of the, what do you call it? Your avatar or whatever, your group avatar. Let me share it to the slide. Hey, is that you when you were younger? You got a bit darker. Anyway, okay. So, Batra development. So when you see a website, I want you guys to remember and understand these three keywords: content, presentation or styling, and interaction. What is content? Okay, content is anything that you essentially consume that you can actually understand. I mean, the point of the web page, right? Normally they're expressed in text, right? And then images, video, audio, what else? Animation, what have you. I mean, those are what we consider content. And the way that we typically deliver content is to use the technology that we call HTML. So I want you to associate content with HTML. Okay. Now, what are we showing here? We're showing simply just the content without the styling, the presentation. So in other words, let me do a live demonstration real quick. How do you get the Facebook page to look bad like this, right? It's actually very simple. So I'm going to go to my Facebook page and wow. Oh man. Oh, there's another one, man. Hold on. There's another one. Oh, shoot. Hey, that was an accident. I did not mean to click that, but anyway. All right, so you guys are familiar with this page. I mean, this is what Facebook looks like, right? You can, when you use Firefox as your web browser, you can actually install what we call I think it's called Web Developer add-on, okay? And what it will allow you to do is first it will install a toolbar for you, okay? And then one of the things that it allows you to do is that you can turn off CSS application onto that page. So you see, Facebook looks nice like this because we use something called CSS to style the page. So let's take a look at what happens to Facebook when you don't have any CSS styling applied to it. So you can click here, and then you can click on Disable All Styles. So this is what Facebook looks like without any styling applied to it, without using CSS. So you see that this is what we mean by the presentation. Okay, and then when you re-enable CSS, then you get, if I can, hold on. Then you get the same page back. Okay. But you see, what remains when you turn off CSS is all the content that the web page wants to show to you. So you see, we have a separation of components, right? You have the content that's always going to be there, and then you have the styling, which you can enable or disable. Now,
why do you want to disable CSS?
Because we want to. Okay, well, to answer the question why I disable CSS is to show you that a web page is composed of different components. Okay, you guys might view the web page as a single component where everything comes together in just one package. But in reality, it's actually composed of 3 different components. And that's why I turn off or disable CSS, so that you can see that one of the components is simply just the content, right? So does that answer your question, Batra? Okay. All right. Where was I? So we have content, and I've shown you the styling. Okay, so we have content. So this, right, now it makes sense why this page, we have the original page, and then on this page we simply just have content, because on this page is the screenshot of what happens when you disable CSS. Okay, then the next thing is what? But once you enable CSS, right, then you essentially get the original pretty page that you saw earlier. How about the last component that we have not covered yet? The last component is interactivity. Okay, you guys are like the new generation, probably about 10 years younger than me. But back in the days when I was your age, right? Websites were static then. What do you think I mean by static website? Right, not animated, not interactive, okay? By interactive, we mean this. We mean, for example, we consider typing something into your search engine, the Facebook search, and then it pops up something. This is what we mean by interactivity, okay? When something happens on the website without the page refresh, okay, all these are interactive features of websites that can be enabled once you have JavaScript. Let me show you an example of the website that uses the most interactivity that I know. It's this one. This one. I'm not joking. So what do I mean? Hold on. So let's go back to Firefox. By the way, so who here likes to use Firefox or uses Firefox as their default web browser? Firefox is the tool of choice for web developers. And the reason's because with Firefox you can install an add-on or an extension called Firebug, which is the web developers' favorite tool for using with websites. It allows you to debug and inspect your website. So this is the reason why, probably for the first time in this semester, that I actually launched Firefox instead of using my favorite web browser, Chrome. And I wanted to show you Courseville. So what I want to show you next is interactivity. In other words, JavaScript. So let's just recap a bit before we move on, yeah? So I said content is HTML, CSS is presentation or styling, and the last component is going to be JavaScript, which helps you have interactivity in your website. So you guys probably will expect that when I click on this, it takes you to whatever page that we wanted to go to, right? If I clicked on assignments, I can see that there are about 44 students who are still screwed and don't know how to do the Ruby homework, right? 79% of the students still have not submitted the homework. Good luck to you guys. But the point is, this is what you expect to happen. I actually can do something to this web page that will cause it to not function properly. So what can I do? One of the buttons that the web developer Firefox extension allows you to do as well is that it allows you to disable JavaScript. Okay, so when you go to disable JavaScript, and then disable all JavaScript. Let's take a look at what happens now to our lovely Courseville website. So I just clicked on home, and we still see this progress or whatever it's called spinning, right? But nothing's happening. The reason is because this website uses JavaScript to allow you to navigate the website. But without JavaScript, when JavaScript is disabled, then the website doesn't work anymore. In other words, it is now not interactive. So I would like to emphasize the point that for a website to be fully interactive, you need to have JavaScript enabled. Okay? You need to, for it to be interactive, you need to do something in JavaScript to allow it to be interactive. And JavaScript is so important that even when you go to Facebook, you'll even see that Facebook will warn you that for a better experience, you must or you should enable JavaScript on your browser. Okay. So some of you might ask me, okay, all right, so I disabled it. How do I re-enable? Very easily by clicking on disable JavaScript and uncheck JavaScript or disable JavaScript, and then just refresh the page. Then the page should now not warn you about JavaScript being disabled anymore. So what sort of interactivities are we talking about? Well, I've already mentioned, right, that when you type something here, right, all these are actually stuff that's enabled by JavaScript. All these interactivities. I think chat most likely will also be related to JavaScript. So that's the point that I want to deliver to you guys, is that when you view a web page, it's not just one blob, it's not just one component that comes together, it's actually composed of three things, okay? And I want you guys to understand that, because now what we are going to move on and study is each component in detail. Starting off with probably the simplest component to understand, and that is the content, HTML. The current version of HTML is HTML5. Okay, this is why we have that number as a suffix. Prior to this, we had HTML version 4, which had been the standard, the de facto version for a long time, for almost maybe 10 years. So some of you might wonder, like, okay, so what is HTML? What does it look like? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. I think that the most important terms or keys from that HTML terminology are two things. That it is a language, just like how you study Java, just like how you study Ruby. And even more importantly, is the concept of markup. We shall explore today what we mean by markup, like why do we need to have it in there. The main role, okay, of HTML is to describe the content of a web page, okay? And if you wanted to see what HTML looks like, on the left-hand side is an example of what HTML looks like. So HTML is just text. Just like how you open your Java code, source code in the text editor, you can also open HTML, right, using a text editor. The file extension for HTML is .html, just like how you have .java, right? So if you were to type all this out, all of the text on the left-hand side into a text document, and then open it using a web browser, then you should see something like on the right-hand side. Okay. By the way, when you view a web page, you can actually look at its HTML as well. Let's see. For example, if you're on Facebook.com and if you wanted to look at the source code for this page, you can do a right click and then view page source. And then you're treated with a whole bunch of stuff. So when you look at websites like Facebook or Twitter, it's very hard to study the HTML on that page because they use a pretty advanced technology, like they use page loading after the page has already been loaded. But one thing that that makes you know that this is an HTML page is because all good HTML websites or web page will always start off with that syntax on the first line, doctype HTML. Okay. All right. So for this week's homework, you guys will get to create a web page of your own and for those of you who have taken a look at the homework prompt, you should already see what we expect from you. Should not take you too long. The basic structure of HTML is quite simple. Once you define the doc type, okay, then the required syntax that you should have for your web page are broken into 4 parts. Okay, you have the HTML tag. Okay, then you have the head tag where you put the title of the web page into it. The stuff that is inside the title will be shown when you view it on your browser here. So this is what we call the title of the web page. Okay, so this is what, if you wanted to have some text here, you simply just put that text right here inside title. And then the next part, the last part that you need for your website is the body. Okay, which is labeled as number 4 here. Hey, my mouse cursor is gone. Anyway, so here's another example. So now that we've covered some basic syntax, like I said, right, all HTML page starts off with the doc type HTML. Okay, and then you have the HTML, the enclosing HTML tag, right, followed by head, and then body. The key that I want you guys to remember is that HTML tags are simply just tags that are used to mark up the content. What do we mean by mark up? We mean to, by marking up, we mean that it helps annotate the meaning of each text line that you want to include on that page. For example, let's take a look at this one, this line right here. Welcome to San Joaquin Valley Town Hall. And we choose to use the P tag there. Does anyone know what the P tag stands for? Paragraph. So we are simply denoting the line here that this is supposed to stand for a paragraph. And that's very important, okay? Because what I want you guys to take away from this is that we are simply trying to tell the computer, okay, what each line actually represents. We're marking up the meaning of each line. When the computer reads this text, okay, it knows that all the stuff within the body tag, this constitutes the main body of this web page. And when it reads here, the title, then the website or your web browser understands that, oh, so here we are referring to the title of the page. Do you understand that significance? In other words, we found a way to annotate, give meaning, okay, to tell the computer the meaning of each text line by using tags, HTML tags. How about H1? What's the meaning of H1? Heading, right? Heading and number 1. So if there's number 1, then there's probably 2, 3, 4, 5, right? What does the number actually represent? The what? Level. The level? So if you were to put H1 and H2 and compare them, which one would be bigger? Does anyone know? 1 would be bigger, right? You see, using CSS, we can actually style it to be however we want. We can actually make H1 smaller than H2, for example. But the key is this though. The meaning behind H1 compared to H2 is that H1 is supposed to be more prominent than H2. So, like I said, let me reiterate that when you use HTML tag, you use them to mark up some meaning to the text, but you're not styling the page. Reason why I am really emphasizing this is because prior to HTML5, people used to use HTML tag to style the page as well. But that's not how we should use it anymore. We should use HTML tags to simply denote the meaning that we want for all the content that we have, and to use CSS to style the page. So this is why when you see H1 and when you display it on your web browser, even though it might look like a big text, but I don't want you to understand it as H1 allows you to have big text, because that's not the point of H1. The point of H1 is to say that, to denote, to imply that this text is the biggest heading in like the most prominent heading in the page. All right, so now that we see what HTML looks like, I'm going to go over the HTML tags that we have available for HTML5. And I would like to start off by saying that I do not know how many HTML tags there are, but I know that the ones that we'll be covering today is probably only like 5 or 10% of all the tags that you have for HTML5. And I think that the list of tags will just keep growing. Okay? So it is not possible to cover every single tag with the time that we have. But I'm going to try to cover the tags that I think are important and show you some capability of HTML5. So we'll start off with header, right? I'm sure that all of you have used the Word document before, right? I mean, Microsoft Word. When you look at a Word document, what is it composed of? It's composed of this section. I'm not sure if you guys have ever used it. And then it's composed of the footer section, right? And then this is the main body of the document. So are you guys familiar with this concept? Like when I did my homework there in college, I would put my name and my student ID and the title sometimes, like my professor's name, inside the header, and the footer is for, I don't normally use it, okay? But I want you guys to keep this in mind, because when we're talking about header in HTML, it's the same concept, okay? It is the stuff that's supposed to be in the header of your web page. So web page structure is pretty much the same thing as a Word document. It has header, it has the main body, and it has the footer. The way that I'm going to try to teach you guys about HTML and CSS is to actually base it off of a real website. And let me show you, not a real website, an example website. So let me show you an example web page that we are going to be using for today's lecture, just so that you have an idea of what it'll look like or what you can do with HTML and CSS. So just to cover real quickly, we just covered the first HTML tag, right, which was header. And this is where you would want to put your header there, right? This is where you put your header. Then you have the body, followed by right here, which is the footer, okay? So with HTML5, without Flash, okay? So let me take a detour a bit. Prior to HTML5, what do you think were the technologies that allowed you to embed videos into your website? You guys should know the most popular one. Okay, YouTube. YouTube is a website. Flash. So raise your hand if you have heard of Flash before. Not Flash Gordon, but Flash. A few, right? Prior to HTML5, one of the tags that they provide for you is called a video tag, which allows you to embed video into your website. But prior to that, you had to install these third-party plugins. We call them plugins to your web browser to be able to play these videos, right? This is why you have to constantly update your Flash player so that you can view videos on the website. But now, with the advent of HTML5, you can simply, we'll show you how easy it is to embed a video into your website without having to install anything extra. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, I just want to show you that hopefully by the end of today that you guys will be able to create a website that looks sort of like this. Where you have images, you have buttons, you have different sections. We call them sections. You have headings, right? You can embed videos, and you can actually embed something we call canvas. This, which is, the same concept as applet. It allows you to draw, something on your website. Then you have the footer section or area that I mentioned earlier. So this is the website that we will try to build today using the knowledge that we learned. And if you are interested in looking at the source code, this has already been checked in to Git as well. And I think I remember I posted the link to this, my GitHub. English, huh? Probably would be the Agni United. We'll have to look at the source code later. The next tag that I want to introduce you guys is called hgroup. And hgroups simply allows you to group headings together. So you might ask, like, what's the point? What's the point of grouping headers together? Don't think of it in terms of looks. That's the point I want you guys to get. You simply just want to tell the browser that, hey, look, these two headers or headings, they come together. Okay, they're part of the same group. As opposed to without this hgroup tag, then you would have no way of denoting that these two headings go together. Do you see? So again, when you think of HTML tags, I want you guys to think of the meaning, okay, what it's trying to convey, rather than how it's going to look. And then you have nav. So can someone tell me, based on just the text that you are able to make out, what the nav usually is used for? Okay, you can use it for the footer. Home, about, our products, contact us. What do you know? Where do you normally see something like this? Some navigation bar, right? When you visit companies' websites, normally you would see at the top of the page something like this. No? So let's say that this is, I don't know, Microsoft. That's the logo. And then you would see something like this, right? The navigation bar, home, products, what have you. We use the nav tag to denote that this area, all the stuff that is within the nav tag, refers to the navigation portion of the website. Okay. So can someone tell me, for those of you who do not know what UL and LI are, what does UL stand for, what does LI stand for, and what are those tags for? Batra, what do you think UL and LI stand for, or what do they do? Yeah, it is a list, right? Now let's be a bit more precise. So L for UL stands for from UL. L stands for list. What do you think U stands for? Unordered. And what if you wanted to have ordered? OL. So the key that I want to OL and UL, this is ordered list, and UL is unordered list. They are the opposite of each other. Again, some of you try to put this code snippet into your text editor and then save it and then open it using a web browser. More often than not, or most likely, you see that this gets rendered like this. Home with a bullet point, and then about us, blah, blah, blah. That's what you'll see get rendered by the browser normally when you try to mark up an unordered list. The key that I want you to take away again, and I'll keep saying this over and over, is that just because that's how the browser renders unordered list does not mean that that's the look that you're stuck with. You can actually use CSS to style your UL tag or OL tag to look different. So the point is that the looks is going to be completely configurable, okay, by the designers. But the point here that you should remember when you develop HTML is that you are simply marking up, right? That, hey, look, these four, they are lists, okay? They're just lists of 4 items, and they are unordered. Again, the meaning behind the tag, right? Not how it looks. So this is what we have for UL. And for OL, then by default, the browser will render it with numbers, right? This is why it's called order. So had we changed that UL to be OL, then we would have something like this: home, about us. The only difference you can probably see is that one will render the bullet points while the other one will render numbers. Is that clear? I just want to, this is how I can show you visually how they differ, but the key is that one is simply trying to say, hey, this list is unordered, while the other one is ordered. Wow, Jai, you actually dressed properly today. So proud of you. What happened? All right, the next thing is article and section. Anyone reads magazine on their iPads or your e-reader? Okay, I guess you didn't bring it. Maybe we'll just use this then. So section an article. So we were looking at, the current slide that we are looking at right now is article and section. You use article and section to simply denote content again, but how? What do we mean by denoting with section or content? Well, I want you to first take a look at these two examples. Okay, we have two different examples. One, we have an article that is composed of two sections. While here, you have one section that is composed of two articles. So what's the difference between them then? Well, first let's talk about similarity. They are used to denote a block of content. But you see, the difference between them is that the content that is within the article tag, by itself, it represents complete information. Whereas for section, it is simply just incomplete information. Okay? So if you were to remove section and then have it stand on its own, section would not make sense because it's supposed to be information that supplements the main text. So that's the difference between them. We use article to denote, to tell the browser that this is the main content, if you will. It's almost like the main content of the web page, okay? Where, and you have section. When you write an essay, right? If you write an essay is normally composed of what? Paragraphs. If I were to mark this up using HTML, I would put article here around the entire essay, for example, because the whole thing is the gist of my essay. But I could, for example, denote or mark up each paragraph with a section tag, because they represent different sections, for example, right? So really, article and section, they're there just to mark up the meaning, right? And the only difference between them is that article, okay, taken should be able to stand alone by itself, whereas section, you need different, it supplements the main text, the main article. So far we've been discussing or talking about text as content, but content doesn't just come in form of text only, right? You can also have images as part of your content. So how do you include an image in your web page? Well, for this slide, there are three things that I want you to take away. And probably the most important is the image tag, or IMG. The IMG tag, or the image tag, is used to specify what image you want to include in your web page. SRC, right there, SRC equals to /figure.jpg. We call these things ALT, height, width, source as tag attribute, okay? Tag attribute. So in this example, the image tag has how many attributes? 4, right? Because you have source attribute, you have width attribute, height attribute, and alternate attribute, or ALT. So how do you use this image tag? You use the image tag by specifying the source of your image, right, relative to the current web page that you have open. So here you're simply trying to include if an image file called figure.jpg, which resides within the same directory as your current web page. And then you can specify the width and the height. And alternate is simply just what happens if that page cannot be loaded. It will display picture text instead. Yes, Auntie?
Can figure block be included outside article?
Oh yeah, yeah. These things can be included outside article. So that's a very good question. The article tag is optional. You do not need to have it in your page. You only use it when you want to denote that, hey, you know, this is like the main article of my website. I would like to reiterate again that for you to have a proper HTML page, you simply just need header, the body, HTML. You know, I don't remember these things. But more or less, this is sort of like the minimum requirement that you need for your web page. All other tags are optional and depend on what you want to do. Just need to include it when you want to. So coming back to this. So now you know how to include an image in your web page, right? The next thing is figure and fig caption. You use the figure tag to denote that, hey, we have a figure here, we have an image, right? And then you can use the fig caption to put caption right underneath your image if you wanted to. It's actually not right underneath, I'm sorry. So I keep messing up what I'm saying too, but you want to say that, hey, this caption goes with that image. And it's up to the designer to decide where he wants to place that caption. Okay? So this is why they need to invent the figure tag, because they wanted to figure out how is it that they can associate some image with some caption. And they did that by introducing two tags, figure and figure caption. Is that clear? Because without the figure tag, then you would not be able to group the fig caption with this image. Okay? So now we have come to audio. Audio is used to include like an MP3 player, audio player in your web page. And it's very simple, right? Again, you have attributes, source, right? And then you are able to also specify how you want the player to behave when it first launches. So the OGG file is simply just one type of audio file, okay? And then controls autoplay loop, right? Controls simply just says that you want to have controls, allow the user to have controls to control the audio player. And autoplay simply just means that you want it to autoplay immediately when the page loads. And loop is just to have the ability to loop. Now, the text inside should be self-explanatory. You see, one of the problems that we have for web development is that when you became a professional web developer, probably the hardest problem is to create your app in a way that it will behave and look the same way on all browsers. Okay. Why do you have to concern yourself about that? Because some browsers, they might not fully support HTML5, and they might, for example, omit the audio tag implementation. And this is why there's that text in there, in the audio tag, to allow you to display something to the user in the case that that browser does not support the audio tag. And believe me, I think that the hardest, the most incompatible web browser has got to be Internet Explorer. It is not funny to web developers because I think this is partly why so many new web developers dislike Internet or Microsoft so much, is because out of all the major web browsers, IE or Internet Explorer is the only one that just deviates from the rest of the group so much. And I think this is part of Microsoft's strategy to keep people using Windows, right? If their web browsers behave so differently, people are forced, right? People are forced to, how should I say it? Take into account of Microsoft. But yeah, there's so many, like when I was developing web applications, for example, there's this HTML tag called placeholder. And how you use this tag is very simple. Nick. You know, I wish I could take pictures. It's so funny. What are you thinking? It's like, obviously you were not listening to me. Like, what were you thinking? So you don't have anything to eat with you today? Oh, you do. Okay. It's like, oh my God. Not yet. Are you crazy? Where was I? I don't remember anymore. Okay, placeholder, thank you. So who said that? Oh, Bhattara development. That was so funny. So placeholder is normally used for something that, a text box, okay? A text box where you guys have seen this, right? Like for example, first name text box. When you see the text box and then the text is a bit grayed out, and then when you click on it, then the grayed out text disappears. This feature is implemented by using the placeholder tag. And sadly, IE does not support this, even though Chrome supports it, and I think Firefox supports it as well. Safari too, I think. Anywho, so what did we have to do? You see, let me digress a bit. Whenever something is not supported by the browser itself, then you have to write code, JavaScript code, to imitate this behavior. So for example, I had to write code to, essentially implement placeholder in IE. And I don't understand it. I mean, it takes me like, 10 minutes to implement that placeholder feature on IE. I don't understand why Microsoft cannot just spend 10 minutes and get it right. These things are, I don't remember which website either. There's actually a website, okay, that will show you how should I say, how complete each browser implements the HTML5 specification. Yeah, something like that. I don't remember the website, but you can Google it up. Just like how Ajahn Antiwong set out 97 requirements for you guys to implement, right? Same thing, HTML5 also says, all right, look, I have these n where n is some number really large, maybe 1,000, n requirements for you to implement, for you to be fully compliant to HTML5, right? Well, guess what? IE comes in last rank, last place, implemented the least number of requirements. I don't understand what they're up to. Okay. Hey, John. I was impressed that you actually dressed properly today. But let's keep quiet. Video. This is how you use the video tag in HTML. Just like the audio tag, right? You have video, you can specify the source, the controls, and then again, the stuff inside the tag would be the text that you display to the user if your browser did not support the video tag, for example. IE. I think it's only going to get worse, okay? I think someday Facebook is going to come out with its own web browser. Hey, did you guys hear the news that Facebook is coming out with some Android application? Have you guys tried? I mean, is it out yet or is it just, no? So what's on the news? I don't know what did Mark Zuckerberg say? What did he say? Is it going to wow the world? No?
Just creating a Facebook OS.
What? They're going to create a Facebook OS?
This is an application on Android. It's called Facebook Home. The home page is going to be all Facebook. You can interact with each other with just a home screen.
Really? Wow. Now Damn. Batra mein aao na Batra. So you guys know the difference between WMA and MP3? What is I think you guys all know MP3. Right. WMA stands for Window Media Audio, probably. So we'll probably only play on what? What kind of browser would play WMA? Right? Internet Explorer. So because we know that a lot of users are going to use IE and some people will use Chrome or Firefox, we probably want to upload different audio, what do you call it, format, right? Depending on which browser. How do you do that? Well, you use the source tag. to enable that. What this will do is that the browser will go through each of the source, and then try and attempt to play WMA. If you're on IE, it will play, but if you're on, let's say, Firefox on OS X, it probably won't play, so it will skip, or it will try the next one. It will try the MP3 file. Of course, if we're on OS X or any, good OS, should be able to play MP3. Okay, and then lastly, if both of these fail, then it will simply just display this text. So this is how the source works. Essentially, giving the browser different options of which file to play, the ones that it actually can play. Embed. So sometimes you want to embed some media into your hey, don't look at me like that. That scares me. Sometimes you want to embed some file or some media into your website, right? How do you do that? You use the embed tag and specifying the source and specifying what type of application is supposed to play that file. Should be pretty self-explanatory. Aside, Auntie. So once you embed, then it will just look like YouTube, where, for example, in the previous example, it will simply just embed that Flash file and then invoke tell the operating system or tell the browser to load the Flash plugin. But it will embed it right into the page. That's why it's called embed. I think this is probably one of the last HTML slides. So aside is used to, I think if you guys, this is why I asked you guys, like if you guys read magazine, but normally when you have some magazine, right, they normally have main text, and then they would have like this little snippet as an aside content. This is what you use the aside tag for. When you have some content that you want to supplement the main text that you have here.
How is it different from section?
Excellent question. I was only going to get to that. Dang, Vadra. Seems like you're going to ace the final. So, coming back to here, right? An essay. You can have an article, and then you have different section, right? But there's nothing to prevent you from having an aside content for this section. So you can imagine one way that you could do this is you have the section, but then you have aside to denote that, all right, this text is like a supplement to this section. So again, I mean, this is one way that I know how to use it, okay? I'm sure that other developers might use it differently, but this is how I normally see when I think of article, section, and aside. But the key is this. The key is that aside should be used as for some content that should be set aside, that should be on the side of your document, right? That's why it's called aside. And when you actually look at web pages that use aside, you'll normally see aside applied to some text that designer would style it such that it would be to the side of your document. That's why it's called aside. Footer, I mean, this should be pretty self-explanatory. coming back to our example. Win. I guess I have to pick on you today too. So the footer. When you want to create the footer of your web page, you would use the footer tag. Canvas, this will be used in your homework, just like how you create an applet in your Java Swing application or whatever, right? You would use the canvas tag to create a canvas for your web page. You can specify the width, the height, and that is the last HTML tag that I wanted to introduce you guys. But let me say this. There's a gazillion HTML tags out there, okay? Some of them should not be used anymore. So we cannot cover them all, but I hope that you guys understand the point that HTML tags are used to mark up meaning, right, to your content, not to style your page. That's the most important thing. And I hope that you guys will be able to find resources on the web when you need to find out more about tags or to understand more about the tags that we've covered today. Some of the good resources, I'm not sure if I would recommend W3 School. I don't remember the URL. Try to check on Stack Overflow. I think there's a lot of good web developers out there that will tell you which are the good resources for HTML5. Okay, and before we take a break, I am going to show you real quickly the page that we're going to be taking a look at, which I think I've already shown you. But all right, so it's this page, right? But the key is that for now, we are going to disable CSS. Without CSS, okay, it's just a very simple page, right? And like I showed you earlier, you can view source by right-click and just click View Page Source. And this is the source of this web page. So after the break, we are going to be taking a look at the source code, how we apply some of the tags that we learned today. Okay, so let's take a break, and we are going to start promptly at 10:40 a.m. So 10-minute break. Of this image, ALT or alternate attribute is used in the case where the image fails to load and the text here will get shown instead. That's why it's called alternate. You can specify the width and the height as well, along with your image tag. Then you have section and you have canvas. Now, I want you to pay a particular attention in this for this canvas tag, because if you take a look carefully, you have canvas, right, with the ID and width and height, but there's nothing inside the canvas tag. So how did I draw these three different lines? It's quite simple, really. If you scroll up to the beginning of the text of this document, you'll see that we get the canvas, and I'm not going to explain yet what this document.getElementById, but actually for the people who pay a bit attention, you'll see that when I created the canvas tag, I had one attribute called ID, and I assigned my canvas to it. You see, you can use plain old JavaScript to get element by ID, so you can search on the web page for some element or that canvas by its ID. In this case, it's the my canvas, And then once you have the canvas, right, this is a variable now, okay? And then you can essentially draw something on it. And this should look very much like what you see or how you draw something on Applet, right? You move your pen to some position and then you create a line to another position, and then this is when you actually draw. So what's the gist? I mean, the point is that this is the code that would draw, for example, this line, and this is the code to draw the green line. And this is the piece of code that would enable you to draw this magenta line. And it can get quite complex, right? And the point is not to have you be fluent on how to draw these shapes, but the point is to show you that for you to use the canvas tag, you have to use it in conjunction with the JavaScript programming language. So let's keep going. And then we have, after the canvas tag, right, we have another section where we use the video tag. So we start off this section by having a header, right? And then you have another section where you use the video tag, right? And you load the video from some link, okay? And then you specify what controls you want the player to have. And that's it. And then at the end, then you specify the footer for your page, and then it should show up down here. I think the one thing that I want to point out to you guys is that you'll notice that we only use one article tag for this entire document, right? And then you see how we divide, okay, within that same article. What, Em? Oh no. You can divide within the article different sections, right? You have this first section, second section, third and fourth and fifth section within that article. So, you know, just like how Niran asked, you know, how do you use section, how do you use article? Well, this is one example of how you could use article and section. You have the article applied to the main content of the page, and then you divide it into different sections. So with that in mind, then now let's reapply the styles and remember how this looks right now. And then when I apply styling, what happens? So the page gets totally transformed, right, visually. But the key is that the content remains the same. That's the point, is that you use CSS to style your page, right, to affect the looks of the page, but does not affect the content. So in this sense, then we separate clearly the content and its styling. And I want to first direct your attention to the aside, right? If you remember, this is the markup that we use the aside tag for, and you'll see that this stands to the side of the document. Everything else is pretty much, you know, as expected. We align everything in the middle. So I hope you see that this is the effect of when you apply styling to your page. And now I think we are ready to move on to the next portion of the lecture, which is styling or CSS. And I'll tell you that I'm no expert, okay? I'm not an expert at all when it comes to CSS. But what I can tell you is how CSS or styling can be what are the principles behind CSS styling. So the current version of CSS is CSS version 3. Okay, just like how we have HTML version 5, we also have CSS version 3. And CSS, much like an HTML document, where an HTML document is simply just a text file, CSS is also simply just a text file as well. So if you were to open your text editor and then simply just type in these text into that text editor, you essentially have a CSS file. So we have .java for Java file extension. We have .html for HTML documents. So naturally, we would have a .css for our CSS files or documents. So what's the syntax? Let me explain a bit what each one of these represents. Essentially, you have 4 different components when you're talking about CSS. Probably the most important one is the selector, H1 or P. Some of you might think that, oh, okay, so you essentially put tags inside selector, right? The answer is no. You put what we call CSS selector, which I'll cover in the next slide. But what CSS selector essentially is the language or syntax that you use to express to match the elements on the page that you want to apply the style to. So let me give you an example. In this case, okay, it will essentially apply color and text decoration to all the H1 tags, okay? While on here, this applies 2 attributes, if you will, to the P tags. But you're not limited to just tags. That's the key that I want you to take away. I'm going to erase this now, since we are now moving on to CSS. For example, if you guys remember one of the example that we had from HTML was that canvas, right? Where we specify ID to be, I believe, my canvas, right? Certainly, if I wanted to apply some styling to this canvas tag using CSS, so this is HTML and this is CSS, I could certainly do canvas and then some squiggly line and then apply the attributes, just like what you see here, right? You can certainly do that, okay? But what would happen if you have, 2 canvas on this page? Okay, so you see that we have 2 different canvas on this page. But what if I want to only apply it to the first one? How would I specify that? I certainly cannot simply just apply canvas or use canvas selector, right? I cannot simply just use the CSS selector specifying that I want to apply these attributes to canvas, because it will essentially apply this styling to both canvas. Is that clear? So how do we do that? Well, the people behind HTML and CSS technology realize this. This is why they allow you to select, okay, DOM elements or tags based on something else we call like class or ID. If you remember, this canvas has an ID of my canvas, right? How would I tell CSS, hey, look, I want to apply my styling only to this section, this DOM, this tag? You can do this. The key is the hash sign. The hash sign would match this ID, okay? Is that clear? This is very important because I want to drive home the point that you're not limited to selecting based on tags only. There are so many other different ways that you can select the elements you want to apply styling to using CSS selector. And so let's hold off on this a bit and let's completely cover what's on this slide, and I'm going to come back to that in the next slide. So we've already talked about selector, right? For those of you who want to know more, understand more, just Google CSS selector tutorial. They'll go through, CSS selector syntax, right? But I want to direct your attention to the next three topics that we should cover for this CSS. First is property, right? Property and value. I don't know what that, quadruple A and 00, what that color is, but if you wanted to apply that color to the H1 tag, that's how you would do it. The syntax is very simple. You specify the attribute that you want to apply, colon, followed by the value you want to have applied. Okay. So how about text decoration? This would be the property, and then this would be the value that you want to apply, right? Simple enough. You can apply like background color, right? If you wanted to change the background color for H1, then you would have, I think, call background as the property, colon, followed by the value of whatever background color you want to have applied to H1. And then lastly, I think it's the rules that you guys should be aware of. You want to use semicolon, end every single line with a semicolon. You want to wrap all the attributes with the brackets. I think that's what it's called. And that's pretty much it. Very simple, right? Very much simpler than Java syntax that you guys have to memorize and understand. Now it's time to understand probably the most important concept that you need to know about CSS selector, and that is the difference between ID and class. Wow, I don't know if I'll have enough time, but what I'm going to do next is I'm going to simply write a very simple HTML snippet, okay? And we are going to use really simple HTML tags. And ignore all the pedantic details, right? Just bear with me, okay? So we have ID, I'm making stuff up right now. All right, so we have two paragraph tags. One with the ID, okay. Almost, I'd say pretty much all, can you guys see, okay? So pretty much all, okay, all tags, HTML tags, you can have two attributes that are universally applicable to all tags, and those are ID and class. You guys want to understand this well. ID, class, and there are some rules that you should remember. Whenever you declare an ID, any tags with some ID, you must guarantee that that ID, you can only use that ID once per page. So in other words, if you declare this paragraph tag with the ID of my paragraph, it is illegal, okay? you should not do it, to declare this to be my paragraph as well. Right? ID is just that, identifier, right? Identifier, identification should be unique. So ID should be unique. What about class? Class is something that does not have to be unique, okay? So that's the difference between ID and class. If I were to ask you, what's the difference between ID and class? The answer that you should reply is that ID must be unique, okay? Now, let's do this exercise together. All that we want to do is we want to apply some color to paragraph tag. So I'm going to write down the CSS code. So let's start off with M. Sorry. So I'm going to change this a bit, okay? I don't know where I'm going, but POM instead of. All right. So if I wanted to apply color blue to all the paragraph tags, what do you think the CSS will look like? P, followed by simple enough, right? This, so you guys understand this, right? This is the code right here. P followed by the bracket and then color blue. This would apply color blue to this paragraph tag and this paragraph tag. You guys with me so far? Now, what if I were to tell you that I want to apply this color blue to only elements, okay? Only elements that have the class or the ID of my paragraph. How would I change the CSS selector? Hash, right? Hash of what? My paragraph. Is that right? Right? So this is how you would apply the color blue to all elements whose ID is my paragraph. Does it care if that ID is a paragraph tag or a body tag? No, because this is selecting elements that have whose ID is my paragraph. Okay, good. Next question. So now we know how to pick elements based on DOM elements, based on IDs. The next question is, how do you select DOM elements based on class, the class attribute? Don't confuse that with the Java class. How do you do that? Well, very simple too. If I wanted to pick all DOM elements that contain the POM class, POM class, instead of hash, I will use a .pom. This would match all DOM elements that contain the POM class. Is that clear? So now my question is, if this were my CSS selector, which DOM element would it pick? The bottom one, right? Because the bottom one has the class of POM, P-O-M. Is this clear? Now, I want to add a bit further, okay? You can only have one ID. By one ID, I mean not only that there must exist only one ID for that page, but the ID attribute can only take one value. The difference between ID and class is that for class, you can actually have multiple, a bit vain. You can actually have multiple classes, okay? Not just restricted to one. So, if I wanted to select all the paragraph tags, no, not all paragraph tags, all DOM elements that contain class pack, PAC, I would simply just change this to .pac. right? I mean, you guys still understand so far, right? If I wanted to select all elements that have class POM and pack, what would be the syntax? The syntax would look like this. It would be .pom.pack. .pom.pack. It would match this class. Now, it gets even more twisted, okay? I want you guys to like write this down, okay? There's no space between .pom and .pack right now. But if I were to separate them, .pom, .pack, and there's a space here, my question is, would it still match this DOM element? No, it will not match this DOM element. So let me write this out. All right, so that's one, right? This, we know that .pom.pack will match that one. So how would we match something like .pom space .pack? So I'm going to erase this now. Very simple. The next concept that you have to understand about CSS selector is the concept of hierarchy. By hierarchy, we mean that when you have elements within another element. Like what? Like this. By the way, ID and class, they're all optional. You do not need to have them, okay? You can have class, you can have ID, you can have both, or you can have neither. It's totally fine, optional. So let's take a look at this example. We have, oops, sorry. So we have POM. P class POM, right? How would I match this CSS selector? What would the DOM have to look like? Well, this CSS selector would match this one. Because essentially it says that we are looking for DOM element, all DOM elements that contain the class pack, but are also embedded within within another DOM element that contains POM. Is that clear? Do you see the difference between this one and this one? This one, .pom.pack, simply just whatever DOM elements that contain classes of both POM and pack. Whereas this one, any DOM elements that reside within another DOM element whose class is POM and that it contains pack. Now, the next question is like, what if you have yeah, there's a space here. And there must be a space because otherwise then this becomes a single class, POM pack. Yes, Auntie? Excellent question. Indentation or space does not matter. Okay? You simply just you base it off of how the HTML tags is enclosed. So this could all just be one line. You know, open P, close P for this one. Here, hold on. The indentation doesn't matter, but I'll try to use indentation so that I can visually show you that, oh, this one is embedded within this one. Is that clear, Auntie? So space does not matter. Space does not matter in HTML. So let me continue with this, okay? So I've already shown you, right, one example how to match .pom and .pack. How about this one? And then you have so we have a paragraph tag with class pack. We have another paragraph tag, another paragraph tag, POM. So this is embedded within this, and this one is embedded within this one. My next question is, when you apply .pom.pack, will it match? Well, which one do you think it will match? This one, or this one? 1, 2, 3. Again, there's a space here. Who said 3? 3. So what am I trying to demonstrate to you? I'm trying to demonstrate that when you have a space, it doesn't matter that how many nested levels there are. It's just looking for a DOM element that is contained within some DOM elements whose class is POM. Is that clear? Now, there's also a way to specify direct descendant. Again, I'm just giving you guys examples, okay? But I think this is the one. This is saying that .pack must be directly adjacent to its parent. So in other words, this, if I had this instead, .pom greater sign .pack, okay? This will not match anything because we do not have the DOM element hierarchy where POM and pack are directly, hierarchy, like direct, how should you say it? But yeah, they're not like directly enclosed. So let's just stick with this. So what's the point? What's the point of this slide? I want you guys to understand that, first of all, that the distinction between ID and class is that there must only be one ID per web page, okay? And that for classes, whereas ID you can only have one value, you can have multiple classes value, okay? And that, secondly, I want you guys to understand that to find ID, you use this, Pora. Let's say, for example, Pora. I don't know what that means, but so a hash Pora would match this ID because the hash sign, right? Dot is used for class. Hash is used for ID. And there is a difference between having the classes as a single word versus having two different words, having space separating between the two classes. It would match different elements. So when you look at HTML tags, okay, all the tags that you have on that page, we label them. We call them DOM elements. What do I mean by DOM elements? Let's just take a look at this example right here. How many paragraph tags are there on this page? Just here. 3. Each of the tag represents a DOM element. Okay, they're analogous. When I say we have 3 tags or we have 3 DOM elements, essentially they're all referred to the same thing. So now, I hope that you guys know what I refer to when I talk about DOM elements. And CSS selector, the syntax that I wrote down here, this one, and that one, these are syntax that you use to select the DOM elements you want. One last thing I want to mention. If I were to change this now to para. Okay? And if I were to erase all this, again, just try to understand, okay? Because like there's a gazillion tutorial on CSS selector on the internet. So we have two DOM elements, okay? And if I were to ask you dot para, the question is which DOM element would be matched with this CSS selector syntax? Exactly, both. Excellent answer. Because when you search for, the point is this, CSS selectors can return 0 or more matched elements. You're not restricted to just one, okay? You can have multiple results being returned as a based on your CSS syntax. So is that clear? Yeah? That's more or less of what I expect you guys to understand for CSS selector. So now let's take a look at other examples of CSS selector. So what do we have? I guess you guys can see it okay. I'm trying to turn this off, but I'm failing too. So far we've covered two of them, right? Two of the CSS selectors. We've covered the dot and the hash. If you had star would return all the elements, okay? We also covered this one a bit and this one. I think when it comes time to the final exam, I'll be sure to tell you which syntax I expect you guys to understand. But definitely for now you can definitely write down that you need to understand dot class, hash ID, element, which is the fourth one, this one, which is an OR. Okay, you can use a comma as an OR. You can use this one, and most likely this one. Okay, so this one, this one, this one, perhaps like the first 7 from this page. And there are many tutorials that you can find online to teach you about how to use CSS selector. You can even find DOM elements based on attributes, right? For example, if you remember, the canvas tag had width and height attribute, right? You can search for DOM elements, for example, whose width is, let's say, 400, right? So you would use these syntax, and the examples are right here. And I'm going to try to post some website that you can try out playing with CSS selector so that you have a better understanding. Because on the final exam, I think that we'll have a few problems at least to test you on your understanding of CSS selector. Because CSS selector is extremely important when it comes to web development. You have to use it not only in CSS, but also when you use jQuery, for example. jQuery is a JavaScript library. Again, there are so many, okay? And I don't remember all these syntaxes, but I try to cover the basic ones that you guys are expected to know. I guess we are running a bit of a time time, so I have to sort of skip ahead a bit. So finally, we get to see an example of a CSS file, okay? And I want to ask one of you to tell me or explain to me the third one. What is it trying to match? The third one. In other words, header space h1. What sort of DOM element would match that particular syntax? Header space h1. H1 what? Exactly. H1 in header, right? If you have an H1 tag that is within header tag, it doesn't matter how deep it is. It'll match that, right? And you guys can see examples of what sort of attributes you can apply using CSS. Font size, right? You can change your font size. You can change your width of the content. You can change the font style. You can have italic, right? Color, margin, a lot of stuff you can change with CSS. I think the possibility is almost like limitless. Even more examples. And this is a good one, right? You're not restricted to just 2 levels deep, okay? How about 4, right? You can have 4. In other words, this is looking for an anchor tag that has to be within an li, and that has to be within ul, and that ul must be within a nav tag, right? So the point from these slides is just to show you, what CSS could look like. So now tying it all together, right? This is what you'll get when you finally have all that tied in together. And I just want to quickly show you. I think you guys remember the web page that we were looking at together, and this is the CSS to style that page. And for the final exam, I don't think that will ask you for anything complicated, okay? Because, I myself, for one, certainly am not a designer. When I was working in the US, I was primarily a back-end web developer. What do we mean by back-end web developer? If you remember, like the first slide, we had some server on the right-hand side, and we have 2 web pages, right? See, this is what we call a back-end developer. People who write code for the server, back-end developer. And this is the browser, right? If you remember, this is front-end developer/designer. I primarily worked on the back-end, and we did some front-end, but it was not like design related. Okay. So, just to digress a bit, whenever you work on a web application, or let's just say stick with web application. Typically, when you work on a web application, you only have 2 types of people that actually do the work, the real work. You have the developers, and then you have the designer. And both of these 2 types of people or types of developer have to work together to craft a product. So, most of the time you're either a developer or you are a designer. And I fell under the category of developer. And this is why I don't know too much about CSS, but I understand it enough that I can work effectively with designers. Now we are finally on the last section of our lecture, and that is JavaScript and jQuery. So this year I did not include one of the slides that tries to emphasize that just because it is called JavaScript does not mean that it is in any way related to Java. That's an excellent question. To do that, we must take a time machine, travel back to 1996, and I'm not kidding. Too bad I don't have a time machine. But did you know that JavaScript, before it became JavaScript, at first it was called LiveScript. Live as in L-I-V-E, LiveScript. And originally, the creator of JavaScript did not intend for JavaScript to look like at all like Java. But you see, he went to work for, I think, Sun, the company that created Java, the programming language. And he got a mandate from the top executives that it must look like Java. Why? Why did they mandate that? Well, one of the reasons is because back then in 1996, 97, Java was the cool kid. Java was the programming language that everyone wanted to work on. So it was part of the marketing hype. They wanted to create some product that they could sell that, hey, look, it looks just like Java, to sort of get people to use this. Because believe it or not, back then, JavaScript was not the only programming language available. There were other scripting languages available for web browser as well. And perhaps this was the reason why JavaScript won the battle, because they wisely or not picked the name that sounded popular. Reminds me of the Chinese ripoff that tried to create. Have you guys ever? Oh yeah, have you guys seen this? Well, we're not going to stick with technology. I mean, it's getting a bit boring. I bet my student actually created this. Hold on. No, this one. No, I'm not making this up, man. I bet it was Hoo that. Oh, no, it's not Pizza Hoo. I remember now. Pizza Hut. No, this is not a hoax, man. It's real. Hold on. There's a really good website. Hold on. See Pizza Hut? Right here. You guys see that? KLC, Buckstar Coffee. OMC Mac what? Hold on. What else? The one that tops all of it is. I don't. I'm having trouble trying to locate. Starbucks. Oh yeah, this one. Found it. So let's just take a look at these. 11 ridiculous. Double. This is not too This is probably a rip-off of, what is it called? In-N-Out? Cheeseburger. I didn't say anything, it's just on the webpage. McDeck. Dairy Fairy. Taco Bell Grande. Pizza Hut. Michael Lord. What? OFC. Hey, Obama is trying to open some business. Yeah. All right, that's enough. You guys should wake up now. Okay, so JavaScript is a programming language, and it is a programming language that you can run on your web browser without installing anything. Let me prove it to you. Okay, so if you had Firebug installed, okay, you can launch it by, you guys want to write this down. You can launch Firebug by pressing Command-Shift-C. I don't know how you launch it in Windows. For those of you who use Windows, sorry. So you can just type in, if you wanted to do a hello world, just type in something like console.log hello world. This is JavaScript. Whoa. You see? If you wanted to declare an integer, you just do var I is equal to 5. And if you do I, it's 5. So this is part of the reason why we introduce you to Ruby. Is because now you guys should be more familiar with dynamically typed languages like Ruby or JavaScript, right? And JavaScript is also a dynamically typed language. By that I mean you do not have to declare the type when you want to declare some variable. All right, so for JavaScript, okay, just like how you have .css for CSS file extension, just like how you have .html for HTML documents, JavaScript you would use .js as the file extension for JavaScript files. Let's take a look at how you would install jQuery. Okay, let me start off correctly. So what is JavaScript? Win, what is JavaScript?
It's a program that we use HTML5 to create a web page to be more like stylish.
Why are you guys laughing? That was a good answer. Huh? Why? I didn't know there was an insider. Hey, Batra. You don't even know your name anymore? Nilan. What is JavaScript?
It's something we can run on web browser without installing.
Oh, really? Okay, that's good. How? Okay, JavaScript is, again, a programming language. You can run it on your web browser without installing anything. Okay? And jQuery is a JavaScript library, just like how you have Swing as your Java library. jQuery is a JavaScript library that will help you search for, well, that will help make your life as a web developer easier. So let's take a look what it can do. But first, you need to install it. And how do you install it? Here's an example. This, what you see here, is the file jq_2.html, and is a HTML file. Okay, and you'll see that right underneath head, okay, you have a script tag. Script tag allows you to basically embed script into your HTML document. But one of the things that you can do as well is to tell it what JavaScript source code to load. And in this case, I'm telling it to load jQuery from that website. This is all you have to do to install jQuery on your HTML page, to use it essentially. So you're not installing anything on your computer, okay? Yes, Andy.
In order to write this HTML, you have to use editor, text editor.
Yes. So please do not use Notepad, do not use TextEdit. Please use a real man's text editor or a real woman text editor. They were trying to give failed examples. Examples are Sublime text editor. I don't think you would want to use IntelliJ or Eclipse. I'm not sure if Eclipse supports web development. I'm sure it does. But since you're not, by the way, when you write web applications, you are not compiling anything. That's a very strange way to eat chocolate fun. Okay, so Sublime text editor. Okay. End of story. Just use that. All right? So you do not need to compile anything. When you create a web application, you do not compile HTML, you do not compile CSS, and you do not compile JavaScript. They're all interpreted, just like Ruby, okay? But doesn't mean that you should not care about syntax. If you typed it in incorrectly, your page will not render correctly. Okay. Now that you know how to install jQuery, let's talk about how to use it. jQuery selectors. Ja, I'm listening. All right. For example, man, how should I do this? Okay. Okay, do you guys see? Oh man, it's really hard to see, huh? Okay, I want you all to direct your attention. I want all of you to, if you have a computer, to open the jq_1.html. We're going to go through how to use jQuery now. For those of you who do not have a computer, well, too bad. All right. You see, the way you work with jQuery, you have the DOM that you work against, okay? And that's the case. Can you guys see? That's better? All right, this is the DOM that you're supposed to work off of. And I think I'm gonna do this. Oh man, it's too big. All right, first one first. This is how you use jQuery. That's the DOM, okay, in the sticky notes. Yeah, I don't think Nit understands it, but that's okay. All right, so first line, line 9. I'm going to start picking on you guys now. Which DOM element do you think the first line, line 9 will match? Net? Which DOM element? So who can tell me, line 9, which DOM element will match? Huh? Auntie, you've been here for quite a while, now you start to sound Thai now. You sound a bit, how should I say it? Kiko, like your friends. Huh? Isa. Wow, you've been here too long. Wait, hold on, all right. We're gonna pick good students now. Tato, can you tell me line 9, which DOM element? Div ID full, right? You see, here's the first thing then. The selector you use for jQuery is exactly the same selector that you use for CSS selector. How does that sound? You don't have to memorize two different syntax. They're all the same thing, right? Because remember, hash would match ID, right? So what can you do with jQuery, for example? So if you wanted to change the CSS, right? You simply just find the element and call the .css method, passing it whatever attribute you want to change. Is that clear? What about if you wanted to change the font weight? That's all you have to do. Just find the element and then call the method. Do you have to do them separately? No, you don't have to. We're moving on to the... Frenchies, your turn. I've never picked on you, but since you're talking, I don't even know what I'm going to ask you. So maybe you should be quiet. You can change them all at once too, okay? You see? Do you see line 9 and 10? Those two are equivalent when you compare to line 12 to 15. The line 9 and line 10, you're changing one at a time, right? You're changing the one attribute at a time. But if you see line 12 to line 15, you're doing the exact same thing except that you're changing two attributes all at the same time. Make sense? Keep going. What if you have two different operations? Okay? What if you wanted to, on line 18, you wanted to change CSS, and then you wanted to append something to that element. You can certainly call it twice, or for optimization purposes, you can query it once and then store it as a variable, and then you reuse that variable twice. So in other words, my point is that line 18 and 19 do the exact same thing as line 21 to 23, except that line 21 to 23 is faster because you store the query result. You see, this is the thing about jQuery. Ben, which approach is more efficient? The first one or the second one? Third one. Get out. Hey, explain. As engineers, we have to back up our claim. Well, then you want to listen. You see, the second one is faster because each time, okay, you guys, each time you do a $, parentheses, and then passing in the CSS selector, it has to go through the entire web page, finding the match, right? For line 18 and 19, you're doing it twice. But you see, you're simply referring to the exact same DOM elements that match. So the smarter way would have been call it once and then reuse the exact same variable twice. This is why we say that it's faster. Does that make sense, Badra? Well, maybe you would want to stop using your damn iPad.
He was going to take a picture.
You know, this is already uploaded. Anyway, so let me say it one last time just for you. You should feel very guilty. Look, listen. The $, parentheses, each time you call that, it would go through the web page, the entire web page, trying to locate the DOMs that match that CSS selector. But you see, you're calling it twice, right? So you have to traverse the page twice. Do you really get it? Whereas here, you do it once, but you reuse it twice. So you're saving one page search. So this would be faster. Yeah, exactly, faster. So Mil, how come you don't look so familiar? It's almost as if you just popped up. Did you just come to class? So which one's faster, Mil? Yes, Medrick. What are you guys doing, man? We don't even have food and you guys taking pictures of yourselves? Oh, so narcissistic. Oh my God. You even got the Frenchies to join in. So you see, large part of Thai culture is that we all want to be good photographers, taking pictures of ourselves all day. Right,ท่านประธาน? Okay, last optimization is that you can actually do what we call method chaining. You see, now line 21 to 23 is exactly the same as line 25 to 27. In other words, you can just call them like this. Does that make sense? This is called method chaining. Dot something, dot something. But the reason why I had it like this was because it looks more readable, no? You can see like, oh, okay, so I want to find all the dot bar, and then I want to change CSS, then I want to append to ID Baz. Is that clear? Method chaining? Next class, you are not going to be sitting together. You know, Simon, your friends were actually paying attention in the last class when you were not here. Paid more attention. You have to lead them to victory, not to defeat. And by defeat, I mean F on the final exam. So is that clear? You guys starting to get what jQuery does? Obviously you won't, because you were paying attention to her laptop the whole time. and I'll be the one who's laughing at you guys when you got F's on your final exam. Just like how Niran is laughing and he doesn't even know what I'm talking about. Niran! What is going on? I simply lost the class already. Maybe we should just all watch YouTube videos or something. And then I'll leave it to you guys to self-study. Maybe we'll cancel the office hour.
Seriously, I decide to cancel all the reruns. We will not have a lecture rerun anymore.
Oh,
Seriously. This will not go on.
no more rerun.
But anyway, you got a slide posted, codes are uploaded on Git, and slides are there. So, well, some of you actually listen. They should got something.
Not funny now. So you guys better listen. Okay. Document.ready. This document.ready is called so that whenever your web page gets loaded, the script inside will get executed. Ja. Does that make sense? Without document.ready, okay, the script in here will get executed immediately, but it will not work. Why? The reason is because you have to wait until your page actually gets loaded for the DOM elements to be loaded onto your web browser until you can actually execute these code. Because you see, what the code actually does is that it tries to go through the web page, the DOM, right? Finding these elements. But if you don't wait until your document has been loaded, it will not be able to find those DOM elements. So in other words, what you have to remember for now, every time you use JavaScript or jQuery, always start off with $document.ready function like this. So I think probably since we're running out of time now, the find, okay, so how do you read this? 3 statements, $.parent, find.bar, and then filter p. Essentially what this says is that first find all the matching DOM elements that contains the parent class. And then within all those matching DOM elements, find me all the DOM elements within the .parent that contain .bar. So this would return something like, once you have the .parents, right, it would only return these DOM elements. You know, DOM elements that have bar. And then filter. By that it means that all the .bar DOM elements that it found, we would only take the ones that have p tags. So by that I mean, if this is p tag and has .bar class, and another one is like, let's say, canvas, but it has a .bar as class attribute, it would pick this one. Because this is the only tag that has bar as its class attribute, but the tag is p. Does that make sense? This is why it's called filter. Yeah? So find find all the DOM elements within something, and then just filter based on some criteria. Is that clear?
What if it's a class parent and bar ที่อยู่ใน class P parent and bar ใน class เลย
P parent and bar.
class parent and bar ในเนี่ยของ class is that the same as this
Talk to me after class. Talk to me after class. I'm not sure which you're referring to. And lastly, this is an example of how you can talk to. This is an example of how you can talk to our Ice World server using jQuery. But sadly, I could not get it to work completely, but at least it returns the JSON object. You guys know how you normally type in, into your URL bar, whatever command that you want, and then it returns JSON so that you see on the web page. This is how you do it in using JavaScript. But I didn't get it to work completely because it still returns error. But at least it returns the JSON object. So that's sort of like the last thing that I had prepared. Jan Tiwong, I probably have to talk to you about this one. I still couldn't get it to talk to the server correctly. But so we'll update it.
You can show the thing on the web and show the
Source? Okay. Let's do that right now. So that you guys, I think it's this one. Oh wait, no, sorry. Ajahn Atiwong was nice enough to actually write an example code for your world state viewer so that you can use it for you. Whoa, I thought that, wasn't there a website, Ajahn Atiwong?
So it's in iceworld.com/iceworld again.
Okay. Slash, what was it? Slash Ice World?
It's iceworld.srs.html.
Oh, sorry. Ice World. Okay.
And it's iceworld.
Just this, right? Huh?
No. You're gonna slash iceworld again.
Okay. Now that's what I'm talking about. So I guess this is an example of what your homework should look like. And I think we can look at the source code of how he did this. Is there a keyword that I should search for, Ajahn Tiwong?
It's in the .js.
Oh, it's in the .js file, right? Okay. Yeah.
Probably you could just link it there.
This one, right?
Yeah. And the link is in. No, that's for the whole site. Okay. The thing is in prepare. I will view.
Right. So I think it's probably fetch Ice World states. See, right here. Man, I wish that APT did you spend a lot of time. I also did not know how to get it to work, but you see, this is the key right here. You guys want to remember that this is how one of the commands that you would use to complete your homework.
So, if you agree, I think we'll just leave the slides there and feel free to copy the code. I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite complex, but you're gonna need to do the homework anyway. But feel free to use the code. I mean, any way you want.
Right. So since Ajahn Atiwong was so nice, he spent the time to actually, help guide you guys on how to do the homework. And let me tell you that right here, this line is the key to do part of your homework. Yes, Ajahn Atiwong.
So basically, this is the answer to the homework. But
Right.
please, spend some time to copy it.
Exactly.
And have it work. And modify it anyway.
Yeah. All right. So I think the last thing we want to cover now before we go home is that we want to talk about the homework real quickly. And we also need to take attendance. So this time I will have somebody else that is not do it. She's in the doghouse. So for those of you who have not taken a look at our homework, so it's quite simple really. The first part actually should not take you a long time. You simply just are supposed to create an Icebook page. Okay, Icebook just has profile photo, education info, likes as bullet points, dislikes as bullet points, hobbies list, right? Video, could be anything, just embed some video, some songs, actual songs, so you will probably get to use audio tag. You'll be graded on how functionally complete your web page is in terms of following the requirements, as well as we want to see good looking websites. So probably you guys will get to experiment with CSS. That's the first part. It should be pretty simple, right? I mean, just think of Facebook instead of to get some inspiration. And then the second one is essentially what you just saw. This one. This is what you're supposed to create. Something like that, where you would make API calls to the Iceworld server to get the current state and then plot it onto the web page. And you probably could use, I don't know, something like Canvas, the HTML5 Canvas. If you actually paid attention and look at our homework prompt, Ajahn Atiwong actually overdid what I was asking you guys to do, because I just want you guys to create a web page that will call the Iceworld API to get the necessary data to plot the locations of each character in the Iceworld using HTML5 Canvas. I just specified that we should update every 5 seconds. You can even use a black dot to represent each character.
So we'll just leave the link there. Okay. So like I said, you can just copy the JavaScript code and make it work on your web page. That's fine also. But the code is actually different from what Ajahn would assign a bit in terms of the use of the canvas. I mean, in that code, we'll just update some position of the elements of each ICSN, right? But what Ajahn wants you to do is use HTML5 Canvas, right? But the complexity of the complication of getting the information, passing all the values, you can learn from, or you can just copy it from there. And let me just mention first that the code is not intended to be the best code. I mean, it's just something that works, right? You might come up with better ones.
Right. So you guys should be grateful that at least you have some code that you can work off of. Okay. And I think that is all that we have prepared for today. We plan to have 2-hour office hour later today from 2 to 4. So we'll see you at that room if you have any questions. Next week, we don't have class, but before you leave, Ned, can you help do the attendance? Okay, Ja. We have to take attendance. Ja, hurry up before the Frenchies leave. The date today is April 5th. Go ahead. Do you need the microphone?
No.
Oh, why should I even ask?